The table wore white linen and flickering candles, set beneath a low arch of magnolia limbs bending over my parents' garden. It was their 40th anniversary, staged to the last detail, the antique silver and a jazz trio whispering near the fountain. I sat near the end like always, close enough to refill wine, far enough to fade. Sylvie had already held court with 3 stories, each louder and more self-flattering than the last. Her boutique got a blurb in a lifestyle magazine. A musician stopped by. A model posted one of her silk wraps on Instagram. Dad glowed. Mom nodded along, a smile stretched thin with effort. When dessert arrived, some peach tart her assistant picked up from a bakery I used to process invoices for, Sylvie leaned in and dropped it. "How does it feel?" she asked, raising her glass just high enough to make sure the table was watching, being the most useless one here. A small ripple of laughter slipped over the table like spilled champagne. Quiet, sticky, impossible to pretend. Away. Dad's chuckle was low and unbothered. Mom offered one of those closed-lip smiles she uses when she won't object, but won't stand beside it either. Sylvie's husband smirked like it was a familiar bit. It probably was. I didn't look down. I didn't laugh. I folded my hands in my lap, then set them on the table. My voice didn't rise over the music, but it cut through the night like a cello string snapping. "How does it feel?" I asked, keeping my eyes on Sylvie, knowing the useless one won't be paying your bills anymore. Silence landed at once. Forks stopped midair. Someone coughed. Sylvie's smirk cracked, faltered, vanished. I stood slowly. My chair scraped sharp against the stone. No one stopped me. No one spoke. I turned to the garden gate, the air heavy behind me. I didn't wait for anyone to call after me. I knew they wouldn't. I walked past the fountain, past flickering lights and polished silver, into the dark street beyond. My heels clicked on brick as I went home, each step steadier than the last. They didn't know yet, but everything had already shifted. I was 14 when I heard panic in my mother's voice behind the kitchen door. It was the first time I understood money could hum like a warning in the walls. Dad had lost a major client and the mortgage was due. I worked weekends. At Bellamy Books, shelving paperbacks and straightening displays for $7 an hour. That night, I counted every dollar I had, $800 in total, and slid the envelope onto my father's desk. He didn't say thank you. He called me reliable. The next month, Sylvie got a convertible for her 18th birthday, red with a custom plate, and white leather seats, the kind that turns heads even in Charleston's tourist rush. She squealed when she saw it. My parents beamed. No one mentioned the envelope I left behind. By 17, I picked up extra shifts at a downtown cafe, covering for students who needed weekends off. I gave Dad $500 for new drafting tools when he said his old set was falling apart. He patted my head like I was the dog, then told Mom I was a walking trust fund. At 19, I got a partial scholarship to study art history in Florence. It was the first thing I'd wanted for myself. I sat on the back, steps with the acceptance letter, rereading it until the words blurred. But Sylvie was behind on tuition again, unpaid fees and an apartment too pricey for her part-time gallery job. Dad sat me down in his office. "Family helps family, Karen," he said with that heavy gaze that closed a conversation before it started. I didn't fight. I transferred the $5,000 I had saved for Italy into an account tied to Sylvie's school. She graduated a year later with honors and a portfolio my parents framed. I finished at a state school, juggling night classes and 2 jobs. At Sylvie's wedding, I paid the reception deposit. When she opened Juniper and Silk, I co-signed the loan and never saw the paperwork again. They called me helpful, practical, steady, but not by my name and certainly not with thanks. It was a Tuesday, late enough that I'd shut my laptop and brewed tea. I was in bed with a half-read book when my phone buzzed. Sylvie's name lit the screen. I let it ring twice and answered. "Karen." "Hey," she said, voice bright like we'd just spoken. "I need a favor." I kept quiet. I waited. "The boutique's doing great, really. But there's a space next door I want to expand into. The bank can offer a line of credit, but they want a cosigner. Just $75,000. It's nothing, really. You're good with numbers. Help me make it happen?" She said it like asking for a ride to the airport. I sat up. $75,000 isn't nothing, Sylvie. Oh, come on. She laughed lightly. You sit in that little apartment writing grant proposals all day. You've got investments. No kids, no mortgage. It's not like you're curing cancer. My throat tightened. No, I said. A beat. No, as in, you won't help me? No, as in, I won't co-sign a $75,000 loan for someone who hasn't repaid me for anything. The brightness dropped from her voice. You're being selfish. The word landed like a lit match. I didn't argue. I ended the call. When the quiet settled, I got out of bed and opened my laptop. I clicked through folders until I reached one I'd named without fanfare. Records. It was locked. I typed the password. Receipts, bank transfers, tax forms, tuition payments, business top-ups, all traced back to me. I'd scanned and saved everyone, year after year. At the bottom was a signed and notarized contract dated March 2015. I stared at the final line. Ownership stake, 51%. Karen Mullally. She had cried the night she signed, overwhelmed and desperate. The business was collapsing. I'd liquidated nearly everything to keep her afloat. She signed without reading. I never reminded her. She didn't remember what she gave me, but I had never forgotten. The silence after my question didn't break. It buckled. I watched it fracture in their eyes, one by one. Sylvie blinked fast, her face contorting like she couldn't decide whether to be offended or confused. My mother's hand hovered midair, still holding her wine. My father cleared his throat, but the sound had no weight. No one moved. I didn't sit. I took one step forward, my voice soft but clear. You want to know how I feel? I said. Let me tell you. I turned to Sylvie first. The tuition you couldn't cover at St. Martin's. That was me. The boutique's lease when your rent check bounced. During lockdown. Me again. Payroll for your staff for 3 straight quarters. Covered. I looked at my parents. The down payment on your new roof, the orthodontist, the catered reception for Sylvie's wedding. I signed every check. I filled every gap. Sylvie opened her mouth, but nothing came. I stayed quiet because I thought that's what family did, I said. I thought being useful was the same as being loved. I thought if I worked hard enough, gave enough, I'd earn a seat at this table. My mother looked down. My father finally spoke. That's enough, Karen. I shook my head. It's not even close. I reached into my bag and set a manila folder on the table. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Inside are documents showing I funded over $120,000 in family expenses since I was 16, including the contract making me majority owner of Juniper and Silk. Sylvie jolted upright. You're lying. I met her eyes. You signed it. You cried on the phone. Remember March 2015? I saved your business. You just forgot I was there. My father rose, jaw tight. You're humiliating your sister in front of everyone. No, I said, gathering my voice one last time. I'm done hiding what you refuse to see. I turned toward the gate. Candlelight behind me flickered, restless. No one followed. No one said my name. By the time I reached the street, the air felt cooler, and for the first time, the weight wasn't mine. The next morning, I opened my banking app. My thumb hovered over a scheduled transfer, $2,500 withdrawn from my savings on the 1st of every month, like clockwork. It started quietly back when Sylvie's shop could barely cover utilities. I never told her. She assumed things fixed themselves. I tapped cancel transfer. A pop-up appeared. Are you sure? I pressed. Yes. By week's end, fallout arrived. First, a string of texts from Sylvie. Landlord called. Rent bounced. What's going on? Suppliers are panicking. Are you late on something? Then calls. Then voicemails. Each more frantic than the last. By Friday night, I stopped checking my phone. Saturday morning, the buzzer rang. I went to the intercom already knowing which voice waited. Karen, Sylvie. Snapped. Open the door. My father's voice followed, lower, edged with command. We're not here to fight. We need to talk. I buzzed them in. They entered like they still owned the place. Sylvie stormed to the living room, arms crossed. My father followed slower, eyes scanning like he was searching for something to disapprove of. "You cut me off," Sylvie said. "The boutique is a mess. My suppliers are threatening legal action. My landlord wants 2 months' rent now. You can't just—" "I did," I said, "and I won't restart it." "You don't get to just decide," she snapped. "Not when we're this far in." "I've been deciding it for years," I said, walking to the side table where I kept the folder. "You just never noticed." I set a leather-bound portfolio on the coffee table and opened it. Receipts, wires, the shop loan, bank records, emails with vendors, the notarized contract for my 51% stake. "Everything you've built," I said, turning pages, "has been quietly scaffolded by me. Call me selfish or dramatic if you want, but I'm done." My father leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowing at the contract. "This isn't how family works, Karen," he said. "We don't keep score." "No," I replied. "You just don't like when the math is out loud." For a while. Then Sylvie snatched the folder, skimming the pages like she was seeing my name for the first time. Her hands shook, but she said nothing. "You wanted me to fix it?" I said, folding my arms. "I just did." My father's voice sharpened as he stepped between me and the table. "This ends now. You'll reinstate the payment. We can't afford this chaos. Karen, you have the means. You will help your sister." He spoke like I was a child again, as if the years hadn't passed, as if I hadn't funded their calm for a decade, as if obligation were my default. "I already have," I said evenly. I helped when Sylvie cried to me night after night. When she thought the boutique was finished, when creditors were circling and she couldn't make payroll. I liquidated my investment account, $60,000, my entire cushion. He blinked. Sylvie's head snapped back. "You never said that." She spat. "You didn't tell me." "You didn't ask," I said. She turned to our father, eyes wide. "I thought it was short-term." "You signed a contract," I said. "You were desperate. I saved the business, Sylvie. Then I stepped back so you could pretend it was all you." Her jaw clenched. "You didn't have to humiliate me. You didn't have to bring it up in front of everyone. I brought up the truth. You brought the humiliation the second you called me useless." My father raised his voice. "This isn't about feelings, it's about unity, protecting the family." "No," I said, stepping closer. "It's about power. You don't get to mock the person keeping the lights on. You don't get to call her selfish when she stops letting herself be drained." Sylvie laughed. Bitter. Brittle. "So this is revenge. A sad grab for control." "No," I said softly. "This is reclamation. For years, I kept you afloat and let you pretend I wasn't there. I let you act like I owed you the air you breathed. I don't. Not anymore." My father shook his head. "You're tearing this family apart." "I've been holding it together," I said, quietly, invisibly. "You only noticed me when I said no." Sylvie clutched the portfolio to her chest. Her silence was louder than her shouting had ever been. When they left, I didn't walk them out. I closed the door gently and stood there for a long moment, hand on the knob. My voice had finally landed, and I knew exactly where it would echo. Next. A manila envelope arrived on a rainy morning, heavy like it already understood its contents. Inside was a lawsuit. Sylvie was suing, claiming I coerced her into signing over the boutique during emotional vulnerability. Her lawyer used phrases like undue influence and breach of trust. I didn't panic. I called Laura, who gave me a lawyer's name, Margot Shaw. Margot reviewed everything: the documents, emails, wire proofs, notarized agreement. She didn't flinch. "This isn't a lawsuit," she said, flicking to the last page. "It's a warning. Shot, and it won't land." The hearing came fast. Sylvie showed up polished, lips pressed tight. My father sat beside her, arms crossed, jaw set. Neither looked at me. Her attorney painted me as controlling and calculating, said I preyed on her desperation in 2015, used business as leverage against family. Then Margot stood. No embellishment. She showed what I'd done. $60,000 wired from my account, Debt negotiated, landlord appeased, payroll saved. All documented, all signed. This wasn't exploitation, she said. It was survival. And my client made it possible. The judge wasn't moved by theatrics. Motion to dismiss granted. Just like that. Outside, the air was warm. Margot told me I was free. Walking to my car, I realized something quieter had ended too. Not just the case, but the part of me that still expected them to care. After the gavel fell, silence came quick. No calls, no letters. My mother didn't send her usual vague holiday card with the garden photo. For the first time as an adult, I was entirely unaccounted for in my family's world. I thought it might hurt more. Instead, it felt like stepping into a room I hadn't realized I'd been locked out of. The absence didn't ache, it clarified. With the legal mess behind me, I went back to the easel I'd pulled out weeks earlier. I bought better brushes. I mixed color without hurrying. It didn't matter what I painted: landscapes, unfinished portraits, sometimes only layers of red over green. It wasn't about making something good. It was about feeling my hands do work that wasn't for anyone else. One morning, an email arrived from a woman I'd met years ago through a nonprofit grant. She was helping run a regional women's leadership conference. The theme was resilience, rebuilding without permission. They wanted someone to speak about setting boundaries with grace, someone who had walked away from what once defined her. They wanted me. I sat with it 2 days, then wrote back, "Yes, I'll do it." For the first time in a long while, I let my voice rise above the quiet. My birthday fell on a Tuesday. Plain, unceremonious. I took the day off, wandered the cobbled streets near the waterfront, and bought myself a slice of lemon cake from a bakery that didn't ask questions. No one called, no one from the family anyway. That evening, as the sun slid behind the Spanish moss, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Thinking of you? I miss my girl." 7 words. I stared at the screen a long time, the message hanging like a hand half extended. It wasn't apology. It wasn't acknowledgement. Maybe nostalgia or regret, or an echo of something she once meant. Years ago, it would have undone me. I would have taken it as a sign to soften, to reopen doors I'd only just closed. Not now. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without replying. The harbor wind was warm and clean. I passed the bookstore where I'd worked as a teenager, the one that smelled of old paper and lemon polish. The lights glowed through the windows, and for a second I saw myself shelving paperbacks in the back corner, quiet, invisible, hopeful. But she wasn't me anymore. I kept walking, past the shops, past the schoolhouse with a half-finished mural, past the wide porch of a house I used to imagine as mine. The silence following me wasn't hollow now. It was earned. The room was full of women, some in blazers, others on borrowed time. A soft murmur settled as I stepped to the podium. The lights weren't harsh, but I felt the weight of being seen. I didn't bring notes. I told the truth. For most of my life I believed value came from what you could carry for other people, their debts, their dreams, their disappointments. I became the helper, the planner, the one who showed up when everyone else looked away. I let the silence hold. But the greatest thing I ever gave, I said slowly, was finally giving myself permission to say no. I told them about the loan. The years of silent giving. The dinner when I said the one thing no one expected from me, the truth. I didn't name names. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about weight and how good it felt to put it down. When I finished, the room was still. Then applause, not loud, but real. A woman in the front row nodded with tears in her eyes. Another stood slowly, like unfolding a truth inside herself. Afterward, they came with stories, not about money or shops, but about boundaries and breaking points, about mothers, husbands, sisters, sons, about waking up. That night, I walked home under a wide, starry sky, my name tag still clipped to my blouse, paint on my fingers from the canvas I'd worked on that morning. No more saving anyone from themselves. No more giving until I vanished. I didn't get famous. I didn't get rich. I got free.